American Sunrise Early Edition, Chief Justice John Roberts slams President Trump for supporting impeachment efforts against federal judges. But where was Roberts when Joe Biden was proudly ignoring his own Supreme Court's decisions? And what's wrong with calling for a fair and constitutional process anyway? Presidents Putin and Trump talk peace in Ukraine on the phone, but Putin only agrees to a limited ceasefire, and we've just learned that Ukrainian President Zelensky will also speak with Trump today as well. Will this effort ever get anywhere? No hostages, no peace. Israel has begun another day of attacks on Hamas in Gaza as the terrorist group continues to hold Israeli hostages. Hamas says it's still open to talks. The talks haven't yielded anything for weeks. But merger talks between Google and Israeli cybersecurity company Wiz have been successful, so successful that Google is buying the company for $32 billion. Hey, tell me, is there anything Hamas and the Palestinian terrorists make that's worth even 32 cents? And this is what American innovation looks like. SpaceX successfully brings 2 U.S. astronauts home who were stranded on the International Space Station for months. SpaceX founder Elon Musk's haters should watch this video in deep, deep shame. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. I am Jake Novak. Thanks so much for joining us here on a Wednesday. And welcome especially to our 2 astronauts back home safely. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Joining me now is columnist, political commentator, and the creator of the Naret Files on Substack, Eduardo Naret. And Eduardo, let's get right into what I think is still the top story in America today. Although for me, it should be SpaceX. But, you know, I'm not stupid. We got to talk about this court challenge. I get that Chief Justice John Roberts wants to stick up for the judiciary overall. By the way, his official title, for those of you who don't know, is Chief Justice of the United States, not Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So he's trying to stick up for all the judges. I get it. But Eduardo, I'm sorry, where was his righteous indignation when Joe Biden openly and proudly ignored his own court's decisions on the student loan financing, if you remember that, the forgiveness deal? And when did he ever publicly admonish Chuck Schumer for his, I think, physical threats against the Supreme Court justices? This really feels like selective outrage to me, doesn't it, to you?
I completely agree. I mean, this is a highly unusual and political move from the Chief Justice. He doesn't even put out an official statement through the Supreme Court Public Information Office. He leaks it to Politico. And as I last checked before coming on this morning, his full statement, which we still don't even really know, hasn't even been published on the Supreme Court website. So again, he's choosing a left-wing outlet to give this statement to. And like you said, there's plenty of examples we can go through of all the instances that he could have spoken out when the court was being politicized. What about when the left used the court system to try to imprison President Trump, when Joe Biden tried to imprison his chief political rival? Did Roberts have a problem with that? Did Roberts have a problem with either of the 2 ridiculous impeachments against Donald Trump? So it's interesting to me that he chooses this instance to get involved in politics. And here's what's interesting, actually. Here's the most important thing about all of this. Chief Justice Roberts doesn't have a say. The Constitution gives the Congress the power to impeach federal judges. Now, he can disagree with that. People can have a debate about whether that's the smartest thing for Republicans to do, whether it's good for the country, whether that's a Rubicon we all want to cross. But he doesn't have a say in this matter. And so for him to interject here, he thinks he's protecting the court, but he's actually undermining it. And if he has an issue with politics becoming an issue in the judiciary, with either political party trying to use politics to get results they like out of the court system, perhaps he should take power away away from these rogue judges, perhaps he should exercise his authority as Chief Justice and use the rest of the Supreme Court to take back their rightful jurisdiction on some of these matters, instead of allowing these rogue lower court judges to basically take more power and take power away from the executive branch. What we're seeing is absurd. I mean, just yesterday alone, the federal judge saying that actually, Trump, you can't block transgenders from the military. The federal judges over the last couple of days saying that President Trump actually can't deport criminal, violent, illegal aliens, and actually that he must fly them back. So I don't know about you, Jake. I'm learning something new here. They didn't teach me this in civics, but apparently lower federal judges, the lowest level of them, actually have more power than the President of the United States, and he actually has to check with them before he does anything. That's what I'm learning here. It's shocking to see. And again, none of this is in the Constitution. The only court that is mentioned in the Constitution that is equivalent to the executive branch is the Supreme Court. Every other federal court was created by Congress. And so, frankly, if they're getting out of control, I think Congress has every right to take a look at that system and see what they need to do to prevent this type of action in the future.
Yeah, and it just feels like covering ranks, and you know, it's a judges club. Whether you're a conservative judge, whether you're a left-wing judge, and it doesn't really leave a great taste in your mouth. I mean, again, President Trump was calling for impeachment, not burning down their house, not threatening their lives like it happened to Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, I don't understand why that is such a Rubicon to cross, as you mentioned. All right, Eduardo, Presidents Trump and Putin had that phone call yesterday. It looks like there was some progress. Putin apparently agreed to a 30-day ceasefire on oil and infrastructure projects. We're just learning now this morning that Ukrainian President Zelensky will have his own phone call with President Trump later today. And apparently Zelensky is going to claim that Putin's already broken this deal, although I don't know if the deal was in effect yet. You know, a lot of questions. But, you know, we know that Eduardo, we know President Trump has a quick timeline. He would love to end this war between Russia and Ukraine really quickly. No matter whose side you're on here, I don't think that quick timeline is going to happen now. Do you?
It's unclear, and I think what's more interesting is the reaction that we've seen from the media in the last few weeks. So President Trump campaigned on this. Everybody knew from the second he took the oath of office, he was going to try to end this senseless war. I mean, you look at, it's basically European depopulation. There's been hundreds of thousands of dead soldiers on both sides with no end in sight. And even if you could say that there's going to be a victor emerge from this, what exactly does victory look like? I mean, losing your entire young male population if you're Ukraine or Russia. I mean, leaving weakened from this. And so the media, instead of praising Trump's efforts, or at least, you know, if they don't want to praise him, at least approaching the situation saying, look at what he's doing, he is approaching a peace deal, they criticize. And it's the same old things we've heard now for the last 10 years, since 2015 when he decided to enter the presidential race, which is, oh, he's a puppet of Putin, he likes dictators, he's cozying up to dictators, he wants to be friends with Vladimir Putin, he's destroying the post-World War II order by engaging with Russia in this way. And it's just a little shocking to see from a media in this country. I mean, let's all take a step back here, okay? This is a war that has killed so many people. You look at some of the effects of the war as well. Joe Biden has violated basically decades of U.S. policy when he was cut off all communications with the Russians, and in doing so, pushed Russia into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party, which again, for many, many decades, those two great powers were really not close with each other as they are now. Now they're closer together economically. Now they're closer together militarily, and nobody questioned that. And so, of course, Trump has to go in and be a little conciliatory towards Putin. Of course, he has to go in and give some concessions. So my response to all these people who are criticizing what Trump is doing, do you think Trump is going to achieve anything if he goes into that meeting with Putin? If he has a phone call with Putin and he just starts criticizing him, saying, if you don't do this, we're going to put on these sanctions, we're going to get more involved militarily, that would achieve nothing. And so, again, what Trump is trying to do here, yes, he has to develop a good relationship with Putin if this is going to work. It doesn't mean we have to trust everything Putin is going to say he's going to do. It doesn't mean he's going to do everything he says he's going to do. And I think President Trump knows that. It's about verifying whether Putin is going to do that and about letting him know that if he goes back on his word or if he doesn't fulfill his obligations, that Trump is bold enough to take action. And I think that's the difference between President Trump and what we've had in the past with President Biden, is that President Trump intimidates foreign leaders. They know he means his word. And so, yes, I have no problem with President Trump going into a situation, trying to get a peace agreement here. And we'll have to see, as you say, when time comes, how quickly is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And then if it does happen, is Putin going to stay true to it? And how willing are we going to be to ensure that he does?
All right, I'm going to, in the next two questions, I'm going to combine. So control room, follow me here. I'm going to do two questions together because I think they're too closely related for me to get one answer and then go to the next. So I'm going to combine these next two. Part one is the ratcheting up of the violent and destructive attacks on Elon Musk via vandalism on Tesla stores, Teslas parked in public places, etc. My fear is that soon someone is going to be badly injured, even killed. And now the New York Post is revealing, surprise, surprise, that a lot of these attacks are all coordinated, not by federal workers worried about getting laid off, but by a major multimillionaire California Democratic Party donor. I'm not surprised. Now, let's combine that with the next question, which is, ever since the time of Cain and Abel, Eduardo, we've had people who like to destroy going after the people who like to create. And so you look at this video yesterday of that splashdown of the SpaceX, thanks to SpaceX, of those two astronauts who were stranded on the International Space Station. I mean, how can you still want to destroy Elon Musk's properties and his cars after you see something like this? This should have been the number one story in America today. But even I couldn't leave with it because everyone would say I was some kind of Pollyanna. I mean, this is where we are in America right now, aren't we?
It is, sadly. And if you look at most of Elon's critics, look, I'm not against someone wanting to criticize Elon Musk legitimately. But a lot of his critics, both in a formal setting, like on cable news, or even, sadly, with some of this domestic terrorism, and that's what it is, and that's what we should call it, domestic terrorism. These critics don't have any alternative of their own. So they're so against Elon Musk, they hate everything he's done. So what's their alternative? What have they contributed to society? What have they contributed to the advancement of science, tech? What are they contributing in public service like Elon Musk has? So it's really shameful to see, but I think it's also a warning. In the same way that you and I have talked a lot about the terrorism and the violence on college campuses, and again, I think you can separate an individual student who's protesting for whatever he wants to protest for, and then see what we saw at Columbia, where students taking over private property, taking over a building, violating federal law. That's not just simply protesting, as we've discussed. So when you look at that, what the left has been doing, when you look at now firebombing Tesla dealerships, blowing up vehicles, I think, sadly, this is a warning sign of what is to come. This is what the left always resorts to. You think about the fact that they have no federal power now. They are not in control of the Congress. They don't have control over the courts, at least at the higher levels, and they don't have control of the presidency. And so they've been pushed into a loss. They react this way when they feel like they're being pushed into a corner. And I don't even like talking about it like that because it almost justifies it. Nothing justifies this. Yeah. And this is leftism at its core. They engage in violence, and they tell you that by any means necessary. I mean, we are seeing what by any means necessary means right now, and I fear it's only going to get worse. So credit to Attorney General Pam Bondi for saying that she is going to target and prosecute all these individuals. It's shocking to see. And then just lastly, I know we're short on time here, but again, the contrast between what they're doing against Elon Musk and then what he's able to do in contributing to society by rescuing these astronauts, the contrast couldn't be more clear.
Yeah. Cain and Abel, folks. Read the story again if you're not familiar with it. First book of the Bible. All right, Eduardo Norret, thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks so much, Jake.
All right, coming up, the Hunter Biden laptop story was 100% real. So how has the woman who broke that story been doing after all of establishment Washington came down on her for telling the truth? You'll hear from Miranda Devine in just a moment. And he may not have looked like much, but Mr. Miyagi, it was never a good idea to mess with him. Remember him from The Karate Kid? Well, there's one MSNBC hostess who should be glad Mr. Miyagi isn't around anymore to exact some well-deserved revenge. I'll explain, Daniel Son, when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. That's a live look at Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Not far from there is the big Palm Beach boat show. That's a big deal. I love going to boat shows. I don't have one. I'm probably never going to buy one, but it's kind of fun to go and look at them. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Especially welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble and the Getter chat. Thank you so much. A lot of Mr. Miyagi comments in the Getter chat right now, rightfully so. Speaking of that, a TV host with half a mind can be pretty dangerous. That's what Nicole Wallace of MSNBC truly is. And she proved it again this week by comparing the thugs in Nicaragua to the innocent and decent U.S. citizens of Japanese descent that President Franklin D. Roosevelt interred in camps during World War II. Listen to this.
Is a constitutional crisis now officially upon us? From the invocation of an 18th century law that was the basis for some of the darkest chapters in America's history, things like the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, now being used to deport hundreds of people, to the sudden removal of an immigrant doctor here legally, both moves seemingly from what we know at this hour, at the time in open defiance of court orders.
Yeah, those Japanese Americans were American citizens, and President Roosevelt did something wrong to decent human beings. A. B. The Nicaragua gang members, they need to commit serious crimes to get into that gang. It's not like they sign up and get a patch and they become an Eagle Scout. You get what I'm saying here? To even say that they are somehow related to the Japanese victims of Roosevelt's internment camps is really annoying. You know, the list goes on and on. Now, why did I mention the fictional Mr. Miyagi? Because I would really like him to be alive to exact some revenge for that slur. By the way, the actor who played Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita, really was, as a young man, interned in a camp by President Roosevelt, his entire family. In some ways, I'm glad he isn't alive anymore. Pat Morita died in 2005 because he would have been, I know, very hurt by that comparison. Nicole Wallace, really, just please do something else for a living. I don't know, sell cigarettes or something. That would be less harmful, frankly. But I'm glad that New York Post reporter Miranda Devine, who broke the story of the Hunter Biden laptop, is around. She's lived long enough to see her reporting get thoroughly vindicated. And she told Steve Bannon about it right here.
Ask you, in October of 2020, when you came out with the laptop from hell and all the extra, you and Emma Jo Morris at the New York Post, it looked like the world was against you. Facebook, everybody turned against you, said this was wrong, that the New York Post was going to get sued into oblivion. Today, ma'am, as you sit here and kind of witness Putin talking to Trump about a Russian rapprochement and some sort of help and peace in the Middle East with the Persians and in Ukraine, stopping the war there, what are your thoughts? Did you ever envision in 2020 when you were accused of being a dupe of Russian misinformation, did you ever think you'd see the day that Donald Trump would be back in office and would be negotiating with Putin an overall peace deal?
Well, I mean, no, because it never should have happened that Joe Biden was president. And in fact, if our story had not been censored by Facebook and Twitter, and if those 51 dirty intel officials or former intel officials, mainly from the CIA, hadn't lied and said that the laptop and therefore our stories were Russian disinformation, probably Donald Trump would have squeaked into office again. There would have been no war in Ukraine. There would have been no attack by Hamas on Israel on October 7, 2 years ago. So, no, who could have envisaged what happened? But look, the Democrats went too far, and all the lawfare and all the attacks and the 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump just made him stronger. He is utterly impervious to their attacks, and I think that's why they've now focused their ire on people like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, because they know that Donald Trump is Teflon coated.
And Steve Bannon's War Room airs every Monday through Friday here on Real America's Voice at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, coming up, take that, Israel haters. Google is buying cybersecurity startup founded by 4 Israelis for $32 billion. It's a huge deal and a nice slap in the face to those Google employees who staged an in-office temper tantrum against Israel last year. And how much would you pay for this parking space? Wait, don't make any offers until you hear the asking price. But take your meds first. That's a serious warning. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. Oh man, I am not a very good skier, but even I can appreciate that live shot from Stowe, Vermont. That is a beautiful shot. Sun is out. Looks really, really nice. I admire people who can ski well. I just can't. I just do. I don't have that kind of resentment. That's not where I'm coming from. All right, let's take a look at where the markets are going to begin today as we continue now in American Sunrise Early Edition. Looks like we'll have a positive start to the markets today. But I really want to warn everybody, please don't bet the house on stocks before 2 p.m. at least. 2 p.m. Eastern time is when the Fed is going to come out with their interest rate decision, their forecast on the economy. The market's probably going to tread water until then. So what you see now is really just everyone sort of sitting by and waiting, and a few brave souls making a bet here or there. I don't know. Listen, maybe you guys are smarter than I am, but I just don't like betting the house. Let's take a look at Bitcoin now, because speaking of betting the house, a lot of people have bought some houses with Bitcoin. It looks like, and that's up right now, up almost 2%, $83,700 level. Of course, still way down from that well over 100,000 level it was not that long ago. But boy, you bought Bitcoin even a couple of years ago. You're pretty happy, let alone 10 years ago. All right, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is explaining the tariff process that the Trump team is implementing. And frankly, it makes a lot more sense when he says it. Let's just put it that way. In an interview yesterday, Bessent said the Trump administration will consider policies including currency manipulation, not just tariffs, industrial subsidies, and labor conditions when calculating a country's new tariff rate. So in other words, going to take a look at all those things that the countries do to boost their products, make them cheaper, make them easier to make, and then we're going to decide how much that really costs the American companies that are making competing products, and then we will charge them a tariff of the same amount. It's just reciprocal. So everyone who says tariffs are terrible, we should never do them, yada, 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 and never have anything to say about the tariffs against us, that's one thing. You never want to be a country that's just having to pay tariffs on the products that we send overseas and not doing something about it. So again, why would you allow yourself to be in a relationship, the only one in a relationship who levies tariffs or has to deal with it? So stay tuned. Scott Bessent is making a lot of sense. He should do more interviews, frankly, and hopefully he'll come on this program one day. All right, this story is a good one. It's too good to not talk about, especially to all the Israel-hating crazies out there. Google is buying an Israeli startup called Wiz for $32 billion. Wiz is a cybersecurity company. Now, technically, it is registered in New York. Don't at me with, oh, what are you talking about? It's just for Israelis who are in New York. No, they have a major headquarters in Tel Aviv that they call another center. It's really an Israeli company, and that's fine. And I'm no huge fan of Google either. For those of you who hate Google, also don't come at me. I'm not here to cheerlead for Google. I'm here to talk about the realities. As you may remember, last year, a bunch of Google employees staged a little hissy fit in offices all over the country. I think it was a couple dozen of them. They staged a sit-in. They disrupted work because they hate Israel. They couldn't really explain why they hate Israel so much. A lot of them got fired, not all of them. Boy, they must be upset today because when they were making that protest, Google was about to make a $23 billion offer for Wiz. Well, now it's 40% higher. They're paying them even more. So you guys are not only a little bit off and really inappropriate, you're also highly ineffective. Your company still ended up making the biggest deal. By the way, this is the biggest amount of money ever paid for an Israeli company, $32 billion. All right. It looks like President Trump was right to make a stink about China's growing encroachment on the Panama Canal. Now, why can we say that? Because according to the Wall Street Journal, China's dictator Xi Jinping is furious over a Hong Kong company's decision to divest from some of the ports along the canal. Looks like President Trump was over the correct target. And by the way, speaking of Xi and Trump, Xi is coming to visit the U.S. and the White House in, according to President Trump, the not too distant future. Well, that will be interesting, especially if Xi is still really angry about the Panama Canal. Well, too bad, dude. All right, Frontier Airlines is looking to take advantage of that new policy at Southwest Airlines. Southwest, you might remember, decided to start charging customers for checked bags. They never used to do that. Your bags fly free. That was one of their big slogans. Well, Frontier will now allow you to check your bag for free if you book by March, I guess 24th, I think is the deal, for travel through August. Check your own travel agent or go to their website. I don't want to do a free commercial for them. But what I do like to note is that this is what it's like in a real business environment. Frontier is taking advantage of a situation at one of their competitors, Southwest. It's just a promotion. It's not going to be permanent. But hey, that's the capitalist system. That's how it works. And if you're a customer, take advantage of it. That's all I can say. All right, let's get ready to go from the control room to hit the road. All right, we got a big promise from Cadillac. The luxury GM brand says it expects a third of all of its sales this year to be EVs. Oh, goody. I'm not so sure this is going to pan out. I'm also not so sure we'll find out what the real numbers will be anyway. Are they going to tell us the truth? I don't know. But I will be happy, by the way, to admit that I'm wrong a year from now if those numbers come out to be 33% or higher for EV sales for Cadillacs. I will admit I was wrong. I don't think that's going to happen, though. And I don't know if we'll ever get the real numbers. But again, we get definitive numbers and I'm wrong, I'll say so. All right, we're actually going through another major conversion in the car and truck industry that's not getting anywhere near as much attention as it should. So, the brakes that you use in your car and truck, mostly hydraulic systems right now. They have been the mainstay of brakes forever. But they are now slowly being replaced bit by electric braking systems in newer models. Now, experts say that the electric brake systems are safer and will last longer. But why do I have the feeling that this is going to make things more expensive? And I have a feeling that maybe if you have an electric brake system on your trailer or something like that, you're already paying maybe higher insurance premiums. If you're watching us in Getter and Rumble, get on the Getter chat and tell me if you have an electric braking system. I think they're only kind of available now in trailers and larger vehicles. But if you have one in a car, tell me. I'd love to hear what your experiences are with this. I'm all for it if it works better and it's more safe. Believe me. But I got a bad feeling I'm going to be paying more for this, don't you? But it'll be worth it if it saves someone's life, I guess. All right. Former Chrysler Fiat chief Mark Stewart is selling his Detroit area mansion for $7 million. Here's a look at it. Stewart put a lot into renovating the place. Now, this was originally built by an early auto magnate named Alfred Fisher in the 1920s. Stewart bought the place just a few years ago for $4.9 million. Why is he selling it? Because he's now the CEO of Goodyear, and that company is headquartered in Akron, Ohio. Maybe you can find an old house there to renovate. This place is off the hook. By the way, inside, it looks a little gaudy. It'd be kind of spooky for me to live in a place like that. I don't know. Maybe some of you guys like that kind of decor. All right. Here we go. Here's the big story of the day. Do you want to take a guess at what this parking spot in Boston's fancy Beacon Hill neighborhood costs? Who am I kidding? You'll never guess. The owner is asking for $750,000 for one parking spot in this garage here. That's not all. The buyer will still have to pay $900 in monthly fees covering taxes, homeowners association dues, insurance, and services. Why do I have the feeling the eventual buyer will be someone who thinks America is a greedy country and everyone should pay higher taxes? They probably have a tax break. $750,000 for a parking spot and then well over $9,000 a year just to maintain it. You've got to be kidding me. We're on the wrong track in America. I'm sorry. You got to be crazy. All right, coming up. The president, he takes an oath to defend and protect America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So do federal judges, by the way. So why is one federal judge so dead set on keeping this Nicaragua killer in this country, all of these killers? And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says from now on, negotiations with Hamas will be under fire. Israel's had enough of waiting for Hamas to release the remaining hostages. The latest on that when American Sunrise Early Edition continues. It's Wednesday, March 19th. Here are some of this morning's top stories. Chief Justice John Roberts slams President Trump for supporting impeachment efforts against federal judges. But where was Roberts when Joe Biden was proudly ignoring his own Supreme Court's decisions? And what's wrong with calling for a fair and constitutional process anyway? No hostages, no peace. Israel has begun another day of attacks on Hamas in Gaza as the terrorist group continues to hold Israeli hostages. Hamas says it's still open to talks, but talks haven't yielded anything for weeks. Presidents Putin and Trump talk peace in Ukraine on the phone, but Putin only agrees to a limited ceasefire, and now President Zelensky from Ukraine will also get his phone call. Will this effort ever get anywhere? And this is what American innovation looks like. SpaceX successfully brings 2 U.S. astronauts home who were stranded on the International Space Station for months. SpaceX founder Elon Musk has a lot of haters, but they should watch this video in deep, deep shame. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now. Oh, welcome back. I should say American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. We've been on for half an hour, for crying out loud. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here on this Wednesday. And joining me now to talk about some of these amazing and important stories is attorney and author John Thaler. And John is the author, by the way, of an important book. It's called Report to the Governor, How the Discovery of Mass Corruption in the State of Arizona Led to the Abduction of McKinley Harris. That's John's son. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But John, first, let's talk about this judicial issue, which is not entirely unrelated, by the way. President Trump, he has sworn to protect the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I thought our federal judges were sworn to do that too, which is why that one federal judge, James Boasberg, tried to block the deportation. I just don't understand why he tried to block the deportation of dangerous foreign illegal gang members who are not U.S. citizens. They're not green card holders. They're not refugees. And as radio host and author Mark Levin puts it to Chief Justice Roberts, get off your butt and do something about these rogue district judges and their power grabs before the constitutional system is usurped by them. That is your job, Chief Justice Roberts. John, can you weigh in on all of this, especially with your knowledge of just how dangerous Trendy Aragua and groups like them really are?
Look, there's no question whatsoever that the groups are extremely dangerous, and that's a big deal. The issue here, I think, is a little more complicated, which is whether or not a president in a time that is not one of war, there is no declared war, has the authority to remove from the country anybody who's in the country without a hearing. It's not whether you can remove them. I don't think anybody disagrees at all. And I think it's not even an 80-20 issue. It's probably a 99-1 issue that if you have anybody who enters the country illegally, or frankly, if you have anybody who's here on a visa or a green card who commits crimes, the government has the right to deport. But can a president do that without any form of due process, even some kind of a simple hearing to make sure that they get the right person, that that person is who's been identified as committing the crime, and then that anybody knows about it, so that you're not just simply removing people under the cover of darkness in a way where, especially in a time of war, they're kept prisoner during the entirety of the war. And people have to remember, this was an act, the Alien Enemies Act was actually passed in 1798. So it's very old. And of course, it didn't really apply to the kind of situations we have today. However, it has been applied to that, and that's what Mark Levin is complaining about, and that's what others are complaining about. There are situations, we can talk about that, where the president has shown and exercised the right to remove, foreign nationals in times of what he deems to be a crisis.
Yeah, I think my only worry is that there would be so much delays by that same judiciary in getting those hearings. But maybe they can make some kind of a deal on that. Maybe we'll get somewhere better. Now, John, as you know, you too painfully know, human abduction and trafficking is a big part of what these illegal criminal gangs do. Now, last weekend, you participated in an event with singer Joss Stone as part of the Saving Innocence Project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Saving Innocence is one of the few organizations in the country that actually not only helps in the rescue of abducted and of trafficked children and even young adults, but also provides all of the support services necessary once they are found, once they've been rescued, to get them back integrated into life. Remember, some of these people come obviously from foreign countries, so it's not just a matter of recovering them and giving them back to, say, a parent. They don't have a parent here. They don't have family here. So trying to find for them, the right kind of care, somebody who can adopt them, especially if they're under 18, or if they're over 18, how do you get them integrated into society? They may have been trafficked for years and years and years, don't know how to take care of themselves, don't know how to find a job, don't know what to do. You got to think of what this means. You're sex trafficked or you're enslaved, essentially, as some form of domestic help for years, and all of a sudden you're released. What do you do? Where do you go? So Saving Innocence is a great organization. It provides, all of these services. And like I said, it's one of the few in the country. And it's one of the questions I get asked most is, great, we go rescue these kids. What do we do with them after we find them? Well, Saving Innocence is an organization that does that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'd love to hear more about it in the coming weeks. Sadly, we can talk about this in every country of the world, and not all the scenarios are the same. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about the abduction of humans. So speaking about human abduction, Israel is now conducting its second day of attacks on Hamas, targeting Hamas in Gaza. Hamas had weeks of warnings Remember all those comments from President Trump about all hell breaking loose? I mean, they can't say they weren't warned. In fact, I think President Trump was doing that to warn the American people that his patience was wearing thin so that there wasn't be such a hue and cry when Israel finally got down to business again. I just can't think of any other nation, though, other than Israel and the United States, that would be as patient as they've been with these terrorists while they're holding so many human beings hostage. Can you?
No, and I think that's really the point, is that you wouldn't ever have any country with this kind of hostage situation who would not have gone in almost immediately to try to rescue their hostages. And the fact that Israel has waited patiently, has tried to make deals, has repeatedly tried to make deals, and Hamas has continually not just broken the deals, but obviously broken the deals to be able to get a better result. You know, they don't like, obviously, the result of the war. And so they've been doing almost everything they can to try to keep these human shields. And it really tells you all you need to know about Hamas and Gaza and about the Middle East, that human life to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to many of these groups is totally, completely expendable. It is absolutely an ends justifies the means situation. And, you know, I think everybody's patience has run out. There is no reason at this point not to turn over all of the hostages, all of the dead hostage bodies, and move on from this. And yet you still can't get Hamas to do this.
Hey, John, I want to talk a little bit about your book for a second because, you know, at the end of the day, I think that, yes, there's a lot of visceral hatred here and people can blame the religious differences and things like that. But it takes corruption at a level that has a lot to do with money, has a lot to do with politicians, whether you're talking about human trafficking coming into this country and the cartels, or whether you're talking about something like Hamas. It's about bankrolling and it's about corruption. I wonder if you see any parallels here. I mean, is it at the end of the day still fueled by the same kind of greed and corruption?
Well, for sure it is. And as I said before, it's really an ends justifies the means kind of situation where people can talk themselves into doing almost anything when there's, you know, billions upon billions of dollars involved, when there's power involved. And yeah, you see these parallels all over the world. You know, we think obviously about human trafficking as being something within our borders because of the cartels operating here, because of the open border policies that we've just had, you know, under Biden and other presidents. But, you know, there's over 50 million people trafficked throughout the world, 50 million of them. So this is a worldwide problem, not just a U.S. problem, not just, you know, our border, but you see this everywhere. And, you know, the idea that in, I guess, the 21st century, that you can still take hostages and you can hold hostages, you know, now with Hamas for a year and a half, and that somehow that's okay, and that the rest of the world is not going to hate on you or do things, you know, do diplomatic things, do you know, military actions to force the release is just kind of an absurdity. And it really tells you how much work we really still have to do where corruption is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the anti-Israel protests, they don't even mention the October 7th attacks or the hostages. They just make it sound like Israel suddenly decided to attack for no reason whatsoever. It's really quite amazing. You know, John, I would be remiss if I don't ask you this question, because I think the number one question I get every time you appear on my program is people ask me, why is it that when there's a big event like a Super Bowl or a PGA tournament, why is that such a magnet for human trafficking? Why is that? Is there something that we're missing here? So people thinking like, wait a minute, aren't these like really, really wealthy people who are coming to see these events? I can't get a ticket. Why would they be more likely to try to hook up with this kind of stuff?
Well, I think part of the problem is people think that human trafficking is something that goes on with criminals at some low level. But for all of us, we all know people of all economic stratas who take illicit drugs. You know, cocaine is not something that's for the poor. Fentanyl is not something for the poor. If you look, for example, at the fentanyl deaths, you see that most of the, you know, lower class, economic class people who take fentanyl actually know far more about it and therefore know how to stay away from getting killed by it. It's really middle and upper middle class that wind up getting killed, dying from fentanyl overdoses. It's the same thing with trafficking. We think of trafficking as being this in the shadows thing. But a lot of the trafficking, especially trafficking in California, actually goes on in Northern California, goes on around San Francisco, goes on with Asians who are trapped on boats and taken by, through boats, into like Oakland, Alameda Harbor, et cetera, and are dispersed off into people with money, because it's the people with money who have the ability to buy a person. to buy a domestic servant, to buy what it essentially becomes a sex slave, a kind of a blow-up doll partner, if you will. And so, we think of it that way. So when we see things like golf tournaments or Super Bowls or stuff like that, we think of it in those terms. But one of the things that I think we don't know in this country and don't realize is that when you have things like World Cups overseas, whether it's obviously soccer or other events, they actually set up near those events brothels. It is very, very, very common when you have a World Cup event going on that you set up a whole system of brothels for the men who attend. That's considered perfectly normal and, by the way, perfectly legal. So it's really in this country where it's obviously not legal and it probably shouldn't be, where you have this kind of situation where, instead you see this at things like the WM, the Waste Management Golf Tournament in Scottsdale that just happened a couple of weeks ago, where we had, I think you and I have talked about this before, where we had over 200 arrests take place, for human trafficking. So I think it's more that we just don't think of it as being a upper middle class kind of problem, and it really truly is. Human beings by nature do this, unfortunately, and they do this whether they're American, whether they're South American, whether they're African, whether they're Asian, whether they're European. It doesn't matter. This is an across the board kind of problem. And, unless you really start educating people to the damage that's being done by it, it's going to be very hard to stop it.
Well, heartbreaking, but also eye-opening. John Thaler, again, his book, Report to the Governor. Check it out. It's on Amazon, all those other online sites. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jake.
All right, coming up, imagine the massive levels of selfishness, depravity, and resentment you have to continue to hate Elon Musk after seeing this successful SpaceX rescue mission completed yesterday. Someone who has been pretty selfless with me, David Brody, will join us to talk about that when American Sunrise Early Edition returns. Live look at Dallas, the DFW. That's what I'm calling it. We got a big green streak there. Maybe they're doing that for the whole St. Patrick's Day week. St. Patrick's Day 2 days ago, but they're still sticking with the green. Looks good. I'm glad. All right, welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Let's talk about the long history of human resentment. No, this isn't going to be about the Jets because it's in full view again. We're seeing this now. Look, on the same day that they're burning up Teslas all over the country, angry at Elon Musk resentful of him, all that kind of stuff. The real big story in America, which I think should have been the lead story, even I couldn't leave with it because then people would call me a Pollyanna, was this video, this splashdown, the successful rescue of our astronauts aboard the International Space Station, stranded there by not only the government in some ways, but also another private company, Boeing. I mean, this was a capitalist story, not just a capitalism versus socialism or government kind of story. It was also about the competition between companies. Boeing screwed this up too, by the way. So SpaceX does this. Elon Musk's company is SpaceX. And so because it's Elon Musk's company, this didn't get the coverage or the drama that it should have, that it really deserved to achieve. I know everyone's going to say, oh, well, they did cover it, but this would have been a major, major breaking news story if it hadn't been for this resentment against Elon Musk. Joining me now again, David Brody. Hey, David, look, it's an old story. I think this goes back to Cain and Abel. I'm not trying to be a Bible scholar here, but I do think that Cain is resentful of Abel. He doesn't want God's grace. He's like, oh, who's jealous because God, no, he doesn't care about that. He doesn't want any relationship with God. He's just resentful that someone has worked harder than he has and makes him look bad in comparison. And I think that's what's going on here with the whole Elon Musk resentment at the end of the day.
100%. It's resentment for sure. It's with Elon Musk. And let's go to the top of the list, Donald Trump. I mean, the resentment against Donald Trump is there, too. He creates things, right? He brings wealth. Yes, a lot of people say to himself, hold on for a second. He's bringing wealth to others by whether it be employment, whether it be cities themselves, in New York and other places where he's actually creating things. But people are jealous. The left is jealous. We know this, right? Pay your fair share. We've heard this for decades. Pay your fair share. Well, you know what? The top 10% of income earners in this country pay 70% of the federal income tax. So that's ridiculous on its face. But beyond all of that, I think that's really what's going on here. There's a resentment factor for sure. You know, there's this old joke. I think it's Boris and Ivan are like two Russian farmers, and they both have a crap piece of land. That's all they've got, except Ivan's got a goat. And Boris all of a sudden is approached by an angel. And the angel says, Boris, you can have anything you want. What do you want? He goes, I want Ivan's goat to die. I mean, that is basically resentment, right? I mean, that's basically what it's a human nature situation. So I thought it was kind of interesting when you said, let's talk about human resentment here in this block. How about we talk about human resentment for the next, 12 million hours of television? Because we have a lot of stories that can go around for sure, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, it's about being just, for some reason, and maybe this is why I got into this business, when I see someone succeeding in a big way, my first inclination is I want more people to know about this. Right. I'm not trying to put more money in the pocket of wherever. I just kind of feel like this is kind of cool to talk about. I don't have the whole inclination of, well, there's a lot of journalists who think that their job is to find the negative in a story. And I do think that that's necessary sometimes, absolutely. But if that's all you're doing in a day, when I ran shows, my rule used to be, if we've reported on something negative more than twice without getting on a guest or someone who has a solution to that problem, then we can't do the story anymore, because then we're just being malcontents and we're being resentful. So if you've got a problem with the way Elon Musk is doing this, then help us solve our debt and deficit problem. Give me a solution. After the second time you bash Elon Musk for the haphazard way you think he's doing this, give me a solution. It's as simple as that.
100%. They need a boogeyman. That's what they need, because a boogeyman, provides them the catalyst for profit in terms of their coffers and all of that. But B, for organizing chaos. We talk about creating things. Well, the one thing we should fight back against is when liberals actually create chaos, organize chaos. That's something we should destroy for sure.
Well, there's going to be a lot more on the SpaceX stuff coming up on American Sunrise with David, Dr. G, and T. Bates. I'm Jake Novak. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, but you got to stay here anyway for the next couple hours at least. See you tomorrow.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. So let's just get right to it, guys. Israel attacks Hamas there in Gaza, dropping bombs and sending missiles over again. That ceasefire is done.
We'll see what kind of magic Trump can pull off here in deal making. But this is nasty stuff, obviously.
You really wonder where all these protesters, when they look at this and the level of patience and diplomacy that it's taken to tolerate the way that they've treated everyone and the lies that they've perpetuated. You really wonder what is defensible about that. There's nothing.
This could end relatively soon, or perhaps this could get drawn out even further. But big news overnight with these bombings. No official word from the White House in regards to the overnight bombing there in Gaza, but a lot of intel coming from the Israeli camp said, hey, they gave them an opportunity for peace and for these negotiations with the hostages, and they chose war.
I think at some point Israel makes a decision that it's just going to finish the job. It's going to get rid of Hamas and prepare the Gaza Strip for a very different future that isn't involving Hamas or an Iran proxy.
Israelis and Arabs in this part of the world, wouldn't you at some point want peace? Wouldn't you just be sick of all the bloodshed and all the pain and all the heartbreak? Wouldn't you just be over it at some point? To me, it just never ends, and it's very sad.
Conversation happening today, actually in the next hour. It'll be between President Donald Trump, you may have heard of him, and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Boo, bad guy.
What I think President Trump seeks beyond these assets is a realignment on the Eurasian landmass. That is one that puts China on the back foot and prevents their ascendance both economically and militarily. Russia and China are not natural allies. China's even encroaching on Russian spheres of influence in Asia. And it's important to take advantage of that and try and understand how a peace in Ukraine can benefit our ability to counter Chinese influence in the region and around the world.
Attorney General Andrew Bailey won a lawsuit against China claiming they hoarded PPE during the pandemic, and China was ordered to pay $24.5 billion.
They didn't offer a scintilla of evidence to mitigate or defend themselves against these claims. They know what they did was wrong, and now they're going to pay.
Any of these questions, then you need to call this number right now. Call 800-7.
Just ahead on American Sunrise, a presidential phone call that may result in a little bit of peace. President Trump speaks to Vladimir Putin in an attempt to end the war in Ukraine. What happens next could rewrite history. The details just ahead. Plus, what do we know about President Kennedy's assassination today that we didn't know yesterday? More deadly details were released about that tragic day in November of 1963, but did the remaining 80,000 documents tell us things we didn't already know? We're going to tell you. And an exclusive interview with a MAGA supporter, Kid Rock, in moments, his take on cancel culture, Canada, and the man they call Musk. Those stories, so much more, as American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning. I am Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches, where the Palm Beach Boat Show is taking place right outside our doors, which means a lot more traffic for those of us trying to get into the studio in the morning. Let's bring in David Brody in Washington, D.C. And Terrance, I'm just going to wager a guess that there in Denver, you are not having a boat show outside of your doors.
No, it actually snowed in some places. Denver's one of those weird places. It can snow across town and be bone dry, on the other side of town. But it snowed in some places, and it's a little chilly, so no boat shows.
No,
but there is
in
gun show.
In DC, we got a boatload of crap. We got a boatload of crap in DC, FYI. That's what we got. We don't have any boats.
Whole different kind of boat show. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Hey guys, so look, let's talk about this NASA splashdown yesterday.
Yes.
Of course, it is Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, or Sunny Williams.
And
they are now back
splashdown.
on
Crew 9 back on Earth.
solid ground. Here it is. Let's watch.
Awesome.
And
So I think this, guys, is going to be one of those iconic kind of moments in American history. They have, of course, were stranded in space, not lost, but stranded in space for about 9 months. Now they're back home, and probably one of the happiest people is Elon Musk, because this is all thanks to SpaceX, guys.
I'll tell you, some of the happiest people, Terrance, were the unicorn welcome they got from the dolphins. Did you see that? The dolphins, they were so excited about these astronauts landing. They didn't know what it was. They were like, hey, guys, what's going on? There were dolphins everywhere. I love dolphins. As you guys know, when I see them, if I'm out on the boat here, I will jump in right away with them. They were so cute and so curious, David. I just loved that.
It's just beautiful. I'm assuming you've adopted 7 dolphins at this point. I'm going with that.
Yes.
Gina and Terrance, I mean, this is just great stuff. It reminds me, not that I was alive, I was 5 years old, but in 1970, don't do the math, by the way, in 1970, when Apollo 13 came safely back to America after that potential disaster mission, they landed safely. That was in the Pacific Ocean. This, of course, in Florida. But boy, what a moment. And now if Democrats can just rescue their party, which is still out in space, maybe they'll come back to Earth at some point. That's guys, great stuff.
I've got to say, this is a great moment, but I'm also looking big picture, and I feel like this goes to show how far the American space exploration and governmental, like NASA in general, has fallen off, because now the fact that it's taking private industry to do all of this and to really run our space program and advance our space program, I think that's a sad state of affairs, at least from my perspective. It seems to me that government-run NASA should really still be leading the way, and that's just not the case right now.
Yeah. Further proof that when government gets involved in anything, they screw it up. Thanks to Elon for bailing out really what was a big mistake on the part of Joe Biden's inaction, leaving those astronauts up there for that extended period of time. But we're glad they're home safely. Thanks to private industry, right? All right, let's check out today's Bible verse. It is from Colossians 1, verse 27, and it reads, "To them God willed to make known what are the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory." The mystery of faith is the best part of all. I talked to a friend yesterday who had a massive medical bill for a horrible accident that happened to him. And all this, and they were turning him over to collections. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. All of a sudden yesterday, he got a letter. It's taken care of. Don't worry about it. I said, that is God. He said, who do you think paid this? I said, God paid it. Expect miracles. Chief White House correspondent Brian Glynn is with us. He sees miracles every day happening in that White House. Brian, nearly 2 months into Trump's second presidency, what's the biggest miracle you've seen so far using the instrument of Trump? I mean, God has used Trump so mightily. I don't think any of us could have imagined it when we got behind him back in 2015. Brian, do you?
No, I don't. And I think one of his biggest gifts right now is he's a connector. He is wanted to go down as being the peacemaker who basically ended this war. So I would say the greatest gift right now that I think God gave him was to be able to connect people in any fashion. And what he's done in this country and what he's doing internationally is just a huge blessing. But that phone call yesterday, that could be the first step in ending this war.
So, Brian, you talked about President Trump being a connector and that potentially being the first step in ending this war. Yesterday, of course, he talked with President Putin, a well-documented conversation. Today, it's my understanding, he is set to talk with President Zelensky, which seems to be the next step. He's putting one step in front of the other, slowly moving towards peace.
Yeah, he is. I was reading reports late last night that the agreement to protect the infrastructure and energy components, that has already been violated. There were reports last night of some strikes in some of those regions. So whether or not Putin is serious about this 30-day kind of a ceasefire truce, if you will, reports that are coming out last night, that's already been violated. So we'll see exactly what Zelensky has to say about that this morning after what would appear to be an already violation from Vladimir Putin in that agreement they had from yesterday's phone call.
Yeah, I mean, let's do the disclaimer. No one can trust Putin. I mean, you can't trust Putin at all. Anyhow, this is like come on, right? I mean, this is like a mini ceasefire potentially that seems to already be broken because it was against, they were going to stop on energy and infrastructure, but we'll see. Hey, Brian, let's go to this Wall Street Journal report. President Trump apparently gave the proverbial green light for Israel to strike Gaza. The commander-in-chief condoned the attack after Hamas failed to hand over hostages. The White House does confirm that the president was briefed before the bombs were dropped. What can you tell us about this? Because this is obvious. I mean, talk about so much on your plate. He's got this going on. He's got the Putin, Zelensky situation going on. What are you hearing over there?
Well, how many times have we heard President Trump say, if you do not release these hostages and come through with negotiations, that you're going to have hell to pay? And that's exactly what he supported in these strikes. So he's just following up on what he said. It's interesting. I spoke to a Ukrainian citizen yesterday, just right outside the gates, had been in America for about 8 years, and was telling me just how much strength and power that President Trump has in the world, and that invasion in Ukraine would not have happened if President Trump was in office, and he couldn't tell me any more about, I should say, how much support that the Ukrainian people have for President Trump to bring peace, and that Zelensky is not liked in his country at all. And I can go further into that, but in a different segment. But peace through strength, and I think those strikes that he authorized or approved of prior to Israel doing it just shows that he's not messing around when it comes to eradicating terror in this country, in the world.
Yeah, there's no patriot like a patriot that understands what a real totalitarian regime feels like. Those Eastern Europeans and Cubans and, the Chinese patriots, immigrants, I just love talking to them because they have such great perspective that unfortunately a lot of times is lost on Americans who take it for granted. Brian, speaking of Marxists, if squad member New York Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the future of the Democrat Party, Brian, that party is even worse than we think.
I read that headline and I thought to myself, is their bench that weak? Can they not find anyone else? Did they not learn anything from the 24 elections of what they stand for and what they represent to the American people? And they're just doubling down on it right now with all of the pushback when it comes to getting rid of, drug cartel gang members in this country. I don't understand what the Democratic Party stands for, but if they think AOC is the point on that party, then you can go ahead and build the inauguration stage right behind me back there, because we'll just be getting someone else sworn into office, another Republican, come 28, because that I don't see
Brian,
what credibility she has.
Well, Brian,
to lead the
I'm
Democrats.
totally usurping it. I'm so sorry, but it just occurred to me what we've been talking about, what Terrance and David have talked about repeatedly, is that the Democrats have no actually authentic ideas, except the Marxists in the party actually do have ideas. They're horrible ideas, but at least they're ideas. The Democrats have nothing. Is this the reason why Marxists like AOC are taking over the party and leading it? And Terrance, I'm so sorry. I know it was your turn to ask a question.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
That's a great point. That's an excellent point. But who is that other person? You know, Gavin Newsom, I've said this 4 years ago. I thought that he would be the Democrat, eventually the Democrat nominee. And they said, well, Brian, look what he's done to California. People have very short memories when it comes to someone's track record. Gavin Newsom can bring people like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on his podcast to try to draw the American people to think that he's somewhat in the middle when he is so far left and he's destroyed that state. Right now, they're begging for federal funds to meet their budget. I don't know who the Democrats have, but they've allowed Marxism to actually be the face of their party. And like I said before, about 75 yards back that way is where they build the inauguration stage for the next president. They might as well start building it for either President Trump, J.D. Vance, I just flipped you a good one there, or
President
any
Trump.
other Republican, because we will not. Yeah, hey.
You went there.
Talking.
There's talk of it.
I went there.
Hey, we listen to what you say,
went there.
Brian. We hear what you say, by the way.
Brian, we're going to have to talk about that.
I think it's a sad day in Democrats, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sad day. Brian, we're going to have to talk about that third Trump term the next time we have you on. And it won't be long because you're our very own, and we love you. Thank you so much for being on with us, Brian.
David, 38 degrees, light traffic out there for you, for your weather.
I was going to just say, going up to 70, stand on a bridge. Stand on a bridge. Stand on a bridge. Don't jump off of it.
Can you get me some White House swag since we're just chit-chatting? Brian, can you get me some White House swag next time I see you, like a napkin or something?
A napkin?
T-shirt. I can do that.
Cup. The coffee cups are
Coffee
great.
cup, yeah, exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Brian,
T-shirt.
thank you.
I get it all to you.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Look, I was in Anchor prison all alone. I'm now, because for stealing the block and being a block hog, but now that Terrance and David pushed us over, we're all in Anchor prison. Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with T. Bates, who's finally going to get a chance to talk after I talked over him, and Snow White. She's not. This new star of Disney's latest debacle has been doing her woke best to ensure the film bombs. The insults against the original masterpiece? And every Trump voter will make you think twice before you're going to buy a ticket to this bomb. The details are just ahead as American Sunrise continues.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
That's Washington, D.C. I've heard of it. The water is dirty, FYI. So are a lot of other things, including the politicians. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up a little later in the show, we're going to talk about, I'm going to say it, President Trump's third term. Brian Glenn just mentioned that from the White House. Well, guess what? So did Steve Bannon when he was talking to Chris Cuomo. Look at this.
Had greater long shots than Trump 2028, and we've got a lot of stuff we're working on there. We're not prepared to talk about it publicly, but in a couple of months, I think we will be.
There are literal plans, Steve Bannon says, to begin the march to a Trump third term. Well, inquiring minds like to know about that. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Despite winning the White House, President Trump and his policies continue to face legal challenges seemingly at every turn. The latest setback for the administration came on Tuesday when a federal judge blocked enforcement of the commander-in-chief's executive order banning transgender people from serving in the military. While the judge believes the order violates the constitutional rights of affected soldiers, she delayed her order until Friday in order to allow the administration enough time to appeal. In the meantime, the commander-in-chief is calling for the impeachment of the judge who temporarily blocked deportation flights this past weekend. He describes U.S. District Judge James Boasberg as an unelected troublemaker and agitator. Texas Congressman Brandon Gill has already filed for the articles of impeachment against that judge. Supreme Court Justice John Roberts also jumping into the fray and pushing back against the impeachment, saying, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision." Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will temporarily stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities, but he's not on board with an all-out 30-day ceasefire. That's the long and short of Tuesday's nearly 2-hour phone call between Putin and President Trump. Russian and U.S. negotiators are slated to continue working on a broader peace plan. They'll meet someplace in the Middle East and focus on a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea initially, with the goal of eventually reaching a complete ceasefire and a permanent peace deal. The Kremlin appears leery about an immediate temporary ceasefire amid concerns that a stop in fighting would allow Ukraine to rearm and mobilize more soldiers. President Trump is describing his call with Putin as a great call, despite not having gotten all the concessions he hoped for. However, the talk is widely considered to have been fruitful. And again, as we reported earlier today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold a conversation with President Trump later on today. We, of course, will update you on that as soon as it happens. Coming up, illegals are saying no mas as border encounters keep plummeting. The numbers are indicative of what a strong president can do on the home front. We'll be discussing that story. Plus, President Trump is calling vandals who destroy Elon Musk's Tesla cars domestic terrorists. Ahead, a deeper dive into why that label could also come with consequences. Right now, though, a quick look at this day in history. On this day in 1977 that the last episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show aired on CBS. The series ran from 1970 to 1977. Moore's portrayal of Mary Richards, an unmarried independent woman focused on her career, was groundbreaking for its time. During its 7-year run, the Mary Tyler Moore Show earned 29 primetime Emmys, including Outstanding Comedy 3 years in a row. The series also launched 3 spin-offs. In 2013, the Writers Guild of America ranked it number 6 on its list of the 101 best-written TV series of all time. American Sunrise is also pretty well written, and we're back in just a few minutes.
Who can turn
Cleveland, Ohio, on a Wednesday, on a hump day here in America. By the way, the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team, very, very good this year. Okay, who really cares, right? Unless you live in Cleveland. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Well, here's a question. Did a path to peace come out of a high-stakes phone call? President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, without the horse, spoke for about 2 hours yesterday. Trump trying to figure out a diplomatic solution to ending the war. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino says the call actually went well. Ukraine ready for peace, apparently, as well. Ukrainian President Zelensky just said he now plans to speak with Trump later today. Keep it here on RAV for more on that. Joining us now to discuss the attempted diplomacy with Russia and other potential threats to our country. Well, that's retired Navy SEAL, former FBI special agent, and author of that book right there, Sheep No More, Jonathan Gilliam, back with us here on the show. Jonathan, great to see you. So looks like there's going to be like this mini ceasefire, or we think there's going to be a mini ceasefire on energy and infrastructure before an actual full ceasefire. What are you hearing about this, and what do you think of the call from yesterday?
Well, first of all, let me just say, if you watched any of the mainstream media, you would have thought that this is all a complete failure, that President Trump is a complete failure in these negotiations. And they act like the past 2 months have been a failure. Everything's a failure as far as they report it. And that's a problem because over half the world and half the United States believes that this is a failure. I see this as a complete success, because these types of things take time to work out. What I'm seeing here and what I'm hearing is that Trump is in the negotiation phase. He has to first get these people to the table. Now he's succeeded at that. Now he has to try to get them to agree on certain aspects of peace. He's doing that. And next, it'll become a full-fledged ceasefire, and then the real negotiations for long-term things will occur. That's how these things occur.
That's right. I mean, he's marching it down the field. Biden wouldn't even talk to Putin. So you're absolutely right. Jonathan, let's look at this headline here. Moving on. This is Kash Patel announcing the extradition of an MS-13 leader on FBI's most wanted list back to the United States. That's a big get for the United States. This administration is moving, and they're moving in the right direction.
Right. And, before I say one thing about this, I do want to say one other thing about the last headline is that Biden did meet with Putin. Biden met with Putin 8 months before the war started. and nothing occurred from that. For 2 hours, he sat with him. That was suspicious to begin with. But let's get back to this. So with Kash Patel and what's happening now with the Bureau is I see the fluidity of these arrests. So these arrests are occurring. People are being deported. Other bad guys are being brought here to be tried. These things are happening in rapid fashion. And I don't remember in the past, I don't remember in the past at all, that all of these movements were occurring at the same time within the executive branch. And that is, again, a success from Trump down to his cabinet members, including the FBI. What I would like to see from Kash Patel, though, is a little bit more or less celebrating about the Bureau that he's quote unquote found, and more about what he's doing to clean up the mafias that exist within the Bureau and the bureaucrats, so that we can understand that he's actually getting rid of the people that are going to allow the Bureau to be what they're supposed to be.
Hey, Jonathan, I want to talk a bit about a major Trump campaign promise, which, of course, was securing our borders. According to U.S. Border Patrol stats, the number of illegal aliens being caught illegally entering the United States has now dropped by a whopping 82%. That's really astonishing. That's huge. In February, agents arrested about 8,300 illegals who were trying to sneak into the country. Now, during Joe Biden's final month in office, agents apprehended more than 47,000 illegals. That's a huge gap. According to the New York Times, if the Trump administration is able to hold this trend, arrests could plummet to their lowest levels since the mid-1960s. Now, the numbers speak volumes, but it also seems to me, Jonathan, that the posture of this administration is speaking volumes.
I think it does. And I think just like the speed and the rapid construction of the wall, how quickly, remember how in 4 years of his last administration, they could not get the majority of this wall put up. In fact, during the Biden administration, they started taking it down and trying to sell it. And so I think the rapid nature of the things that are happening are a direct reflection and a trickle down of everything else. You know, I think the biggest thing here are two things. One, President Trump put out the message, don't come here, right? Which is totally opposite of the last administration. It said, come here, and if you have money, go pay for those people to come here. Because I was in Mexico with a client a year and a half ago, and at 3 a.m, every airport that we went to, because we had to transit at night to these airports to get where we were going next, every airport we went to, didn't matter how small it was overflowing with people coming to the United States, no luggage, not looking like they were wealthy enough to afford a plane ticket, and it was packed. And so I'm eager to see what these airports are like now. And I think getting rid of that app that they had to allow the people to use that to get here was the other thing that has really dried up.
How fascinating, Jonathan. I didn't know that. The Trump administration, as you know, has deported violent Tren de Aragua gang members to El Salvador. This happened really about a week ago. Trump invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to do so, proclaiming that Tren de Aragua is perpetuating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the U.S. This law allows the president to detain or deport non-citizens during wartime. So why are critics arguing that Trump is wrong for using this wartime law?
Well, I think, Dr. Gina, to put it lightly, because they're either stupid or they have nefarious intentions. There's only two reasons why. You know, I heard a report last night where someone was talking about they keep going back to the fact that this law was created in the late 1700s. But that's the Constitution was created in the 1700s. We declared our independence. The whole government was set up in the 1700s. So I think murder was created. The law for that was with Moses. Or with God himself at the beginning of time. So it doesn't really matter when the law was created. It's when is it needed and is it used properly? And in this case, it's needed and it's being used properly. And I think just like we were talking about, you know, the things that have stopped the flow of traffic, The things that are trying to continue that flow of traffic are these activist judges and their misuse of the legal system, just like they did for the entire time President Trump was in office before and while Biden was in office. They are using this as weapons to try and stop him.
No doubt about it. And even there's so much going on here. Even U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts getting involved in all of this. We've got 30 seconds, Jonathan. Last quick topic. Tesla. There's been violence against, obviously, Tesla and Elon Musk, all these cars and being burned and all that. The president says perpetrators are going to go through hell for attacking Elon Musk's electric cars and businesses. He also says these violent offenders will be labeled domestic terrorists. There's some of the burning of these Tesla cars. What's your opinion about what's happening here and the label of domestic terrorists? 30 seconds or less.
The use of fear, intimidation, and violence for a political aim. That's a definition of terrorism. I think that's all you have to say. It is terrorism, and it should be treated as such, and it is organized. That's the other thing. People have to realize these people are doing this at the same time these activist judges are doing the things that they're doing, and in between, this is organized and funded.
Yeah. Jonathan Gilliam, great stuff. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Once again, proving the bald guys on this show are the smartest.
Note taken. We're back in a moment with more on American Sunrise.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Hello, folks, waking up to that pretty view. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us. Time now for today's health news that is sponsored by the Wellness Company. And under the microscope today, mind-blowing medical breakthroughs that could happen in your lifetime. Writer Evan Porter says progress is being made every single year in the medical field. He says that, excuse me, in the next 5 to 20 years, we may all see historic advancements. Here are some of those potential developments. New teeth grown naturally could be in our future. Scientists in Japan have had success in getting teeth to grow naturally. This game changer could possibly replace dentures and prosthetics. Of having a drug ready by 2030. So that's exciting. Excuse me. Cancer research, also a talker, especially in the field of vaccines. A lung cancer vaccine could be ready very soon as well. Now, if you didn't know, medical scientists say lung cancer is believed to be one of the deadlier cancers. So this is exciting news as well.
All right. And Gina, don't worry, I'm your backup because I'm going to continue reading. The future could see artificial organs that could act like a real thing. In Australia, a man lived for 100 days with a titanium heart. What? While awaiting a transplant. Bioprinting technology may be creating new working organs. Fascinating. One final one, by the way, to pick up where Gina left off, a one-pill cure for hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is an infection of the liver that could be deadly. You had an Israeli research team that discovered a chemotherapy drug, Curaxin 137, which obliterated a crucial and mysterious protein that the hepatitis virus depended on. Really interesting stuff. It's a new day in America, new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but the reality is there's a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is that the forces that are responsible for breaking our healthcare system aren't going to simply go away. The challenges that our system faces are not going to disappear overnight. So now more than ever, you need to be prepared, and that's where Hewitt, the wellness company, oh, and the graphic too, look at that, the wellness company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust. Their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you and your family safe and healthy. I have one right next to my bedside. Trust me, at my age, it's by my bedside. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. From the flu to strep throat, from COVID to the bird flu, from a trip to the beach to a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. So, make America healthy again. Maha. And it starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of you and your family. Go to www. Did I really say www? What am I, like 94? twc.health/RAV today and order. That's twc.health/RAV and use the promo code RAV to save 10%. Or as Gina would say, 10%. All right, now we had some futuristic medical breakthroughs, and now we're going to get some answers about the assassination of President Kennedy, because there could be some breakthroughs. Did I say breakthroughs? Breakthroughs on that. Dr. G, we're going to talk about that. You're back. I know, it's the voice sometimes. It just goes. It just goes.
It's the China virus that I think just hangs on forever. Thank you so much, David Brody. All right, the remaining 80,000 classified packages regarding the JFK assassination were released last night from the National Archives. It's another Trump campaign promise made and kept. So what do they contain? And is there literally a smoking gun that has been uncovered? Joining us now is Seamus Bruner, an associate director of the research at the Government Accountability Institute. Welcome to the show. Did these newly released files unearth anything earth-shattering about the president's murder?
Good morning, Dr. G. Good morning, David. Nothing earth-shattering, no. It is a huge win for transparency, though. Promises made, promises kept. I was going through them all last night. Really, really fascinating stuff. What strikes me, though, is there are still a few redactions and pages missing. But those redactions and those missing pages, they go back to previous administrations. So, what's really unsettling is if there was anything juicy, it would have been removed potentially years or decades ago. And if there wasn't anything earth-shattering in these files, then why did it take so long to declassify them? So that's the question we're wrestling with. If there's nothing earth-shattering, why were they classified so long?
No, it's a great point. And we should point out that, we heard this 80,000 document number. Some was released last night after 6 p.m. We just found out in the last hour or so, actually in the last 30 minutes, that they've just released another batch. So this is going to be coming out in waves. And I think we should do the disclaimer here, Seamus, that we really should reserve judgment, hold judgment, and figure this out once we start to really get a better picture of these documents, because you can cherry pick a document, and some of this stuff, by the way, has already been released and it's just been less redacted, which might not mean anything or it could mean something. So I think that's important as well. To me, as I looked over some of the documents, not all of them, obviously, but some of the documents, I got the sense clearly that what's really going on here is that the CIA was clearly heavily involved in this somehow, some way, and that JFK's frustration and just anger at the CIA was pretty apparent, and I think these documents are showing a lot of that.
Yeah, you're right, David. Another thing is you'll find a lot of intelligence reports, and it's important to note. I see people going off about, oh, this shows this or this shows that. Intelligence reports are by no means true. Some people take them as gospel, but you should definitely not do that because oftentimes they're not true. And so just because a document says something doesn't mean that that's exactly what happened. I saw that and there's a lot of things that have been previously known and then later debunked. So it's going to take some time to go through 80,000 pages, cross-reference them with, what history has shown and what we know. But so far, I've not seen anything totally earth-shattering.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about a tweet put out by David Harris Jr. He pointed to one of the documents that said that JFK Jr. called Joe Biden a traitor back in 1994. Of course, Joe Biden was a senator then, so this is decades before he became president and compromised our U.S. national security by assisting family members that sold foreign influence. And of course, JFK Jr. died in a plane crash in 1999. But the fact that he was calling him a traitor back in 1994, did you see this document, and what does this mean to you?
Yeah, that document, that's been out for a while. I remember seeing it years ago, actually, and it's pretty fascinating. I don't know that Joe Biden had JFK Jr. offed. In fact, Hillary Clinton would have benefited the most from that as she became the senator from New York. But no, that is a fascinating document. It is real. It is confirmed. He sent a letter, and so I find it interesting. Joe Biden, prophetic maybe. Joe Biden sold our country out to China, as we've revealed over and over and over again. And that happened long after JFK Jr.'s death with the deals with the Chinese intelligence companies and Hunter Biden. So interesting document. Biden will go down as the most corrupt president in U.S. history. And this is just another piece of data in that story.
Well, you point to some interesting information. We want to have you back sometime soon. Seamus Bruner,
Yes.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
All right, Magic Mirror on the Wall. Is this the new Disney film, the worst of them all? Why has the remake of Snow White been plagued by controversy? We will tell you about that when we come back. Stay with us.
Happy Wednesday to you. So good to have you along for the ride this morning. I'm Terrance Bates. It is now time to stay awake, not woke, and it's brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. You know that we try a lot of coffee around here, but 1775 Coffee has quickly become a favorite around the Real America's Voice newsroom. It's roasted in the great state of Florida by folks who care about what goes into your cup. It's produced in small batches, meaning it's always fresh and never sitting on a shelf for months. The beans come from small farms in Bolivia, which means it's real coffee, none of that cheap stuff. And it's none of that cheap stuff and factory produced stuff that gets churned out by the ton. If you're someone who likes coffee that's just like me, tall, dark, smooth, and bold, well, you'll love this coffee for its rich flavor that boasts no bitterness and definitely no acidity. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. They also have a mushroom coffee blend out there. If you haven't tried that yet, it's not quite what you think. It actually tastes like real coffee, but gives you that extra brain boost with 5 functional mushrooms. If you're a K-cup drinker, well, you covered there too. Their pods are filled with actual fresh coffee, not just that powdered stuff. So if you're like us and you drink coffee every single day, make it something good and from a company that shares your values. All you have to do is head over to 1775coffee.com/RAV and use code RAV for 10% off of your order. Give it a shot. You'll taste and feel the difference. Trust us, we drink it here every day. Well, now that we've gotten you caffeinated, it is time to stay awake, not woke. And we're talking about Disney's controversial new version of Snow White starring Rachel Zegler. It hits the big screen this Friday. However, the movie isn't getting the red carpet treatment. Here's part of the trailer.
It's a human.
What did you think I was?
Nothing, ghost. You'll be safe from the Queen here.
The Queen stole everything from all of us. We're gonna need your help. It's time to restore our kingdom.
Rachel Zegler, the main character there, has been a one-woman PR wrecking ball for the film. The actress has insulted the film's source material. She's even hoped that Trump voters will, and this is a quote, never know peace. And to top it off, she's pro-Palestinian. Now, mind you, her co-star is a former IDF soldier and Wonder Woman star. That would be Gal Gadot. In the words of Mickey Mouse, oh boy, yeah, this one really has something going on with it. Let's bring in David Brody, Dr. Gina, to talk about all of this. What do you make of all of this? Dr. Gina, I suspect you won't be going to go see it.
No.
No. My suspicion
the answer
was
is
right.
no. No, they want $50 million at the box office, but this weekend. We'll see if they get it. I don't think it's going to happen. And what are these dwarfs too? Now, aren't they like politically correct magical creatures now? I mean, they're not even. You can't call them a dwarf, of course. So with the woke stuff. So I don't know, Gina. I'm just so done with this type of stuff. But this is an important one because it's gotten a lot of media attention. So I think the requisite media attention as to what they do at the box office, I think, will be important here, unlike some of these other ones that we really don't care about. I think this one will last. We need to know what the box office on this is.
Yeah, well, gosh, I'm about as interested in this movie. I mean, I just think of all the... I would rather watch the dolphins, for sure, swim around that landing yesterday. I thought that was the coolest thing. Over and over again on a loop than I would go see a movie where the star of the movie is just such a really, honestly, a negative person. Like, why be negative? How about talk about the strong things that, again, there are things that we can all agree on. How about we talk about that? You know what? I love animals. Right. She apparently likes animals, at least the character does. Talk about those kinds of things. Why do you have to be sniveling and nasty and say things like, I hope Trump supporters never know peace? Guess what? We do know peace.
Yeah, peace comes in winning, and right now, Trump supporters are winning. Yeah. Coming up, what does the Bible teach us about the holiday of Purim? Banquets? Okay, I should have probably read this before. And the Mad King of Persia? Well, we'll detail the biblical connection. That's next here on American Sunrise.
God bless the USA.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Time now for our moment of faith, brought to us every day by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. I have one. It's good. You should try the Bible out sometime. Anyhow, in focus today, the Jewish holiday of Purim just passed, and with it, the celebration of how Queen Esther saved her people. What's fascinating is that the whole story of Esther unfolds around a series of banquets, royal feasts that shaped the course of history. And at the center of all of it, well, one of history's most reckless and unpredictable rulers, King Xerxes of Persia. Let's discuss this more now with the great biblical insight of one of our favorite guests. That would be Jim Moseley. Jim, the author, of course, of The Duke of D.C., his latest book, appropriately titled Discovering Jesus' Disciples. And around here, we know him as the Bible history guy. Jim, good to see you. So what does the Bible teach us about all of this? I'm fascinated. Take it away.
Well, in the story, Esther marries King Xerxes, right? And he is really one crazy king. So the story starts out, he throws a 6-month-long banquet to impress his nobles because he's about to launch a massive invasion of Greece. And he wants to make sure that everyone's going to stay loyal while he leads this 1 million-man army overseas. But before he even gets to Greece, he has a governor's son cut in two, and he made his army march between the halves. That's just to show how he felt about disloyalty. And when a storm destroyed the bridge that he built over the Hellespont, he ordered the sea to be whipped 300 times and branded with hot irons to teach it a lesson. And later at the Battle of Salamis, he sat on a golden throne high above the battle and tried to command the sea like a god. But the Greek navy annihilated his navy anyway. So his army scattered. Xerxes ran home, abandoning his men, and back in Persia, he drowned his sorrows in pleasure and excess. And that's how Esther, an orphan Jewish girl, got to become his queen. And in the book of Esther, we see that first massive banquet, a 6-month display of wealth and power. And later in Esther, we see another feast, this time hosted by Esther herself. And at her banquet, Esther exposes the plot of Haman, Xerxes' prime minister, to annihilate the Jews. And once again, Xerxes, he flips. He goes from casual to outrage, just as he had with Vashti at the first banquet. But at Esther's dinner party, he executes Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and the rest is history. So what's that mean for us? Well, it means that leaders rise and fall, but God remains in control. Xerxes thought he was the most powerful man on earth, but his pride, his rage, it nearly destroyed his kingdom. He whipped the sea. He executed his own officials. He led his empire to defeat. But even in the midst of all that chaos, God was still working. He placed Esther in the palace for such a time as this. And God's still working today. As believers, we should remember, it's not about who sits on earthly thrones. Nations rise and fall. Rulers come and go. But God's kingdom is unchanging. When the world feels chaotic, we can trust God is always at work, even when we can't see it. Because honoring God isn't about having power. It's about trusting his power. Esther didn't have armies, wealth, or authority, but she had faith. And in the end, her faith was like the king's command when all the swords are drawn.
Just phenomenal. We always hear for such a time as this when it comes to Esther. But how about Xerxes, right? Everything working in perfect order to set that situation up. Jim Moseley, great backstory. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be with you.
Great stuff. Back with the second hour of American Sunrise in 2 minutes. Stick around, everybody.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Dr. G down in West Palm, T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning. As we begin the second hour, Gina, this is the executive branch versus the judicial branch. I mean, Trump and the lawsuits that are coming against this administration is like whack-a-mole. It's like, forget the Empire Strikes Back. It's the activist judges striking back. That's what's going on right now, Dr. G.
Yeah, this has to end. And if I am laying odds, I would say President Trump's going to find a way to make sure this does end before the end of his administration. Terrance, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And it's just interesting to see how all of this is playing out and how President Trump is pushing back against some of these activist judges, David.
Yeah, do not bet against President Trump. Memo to liberals, by the way. All right, Texas Congressman Brandon Gill has filed articles of impeachment, actually, against the chief judge of the Federal District Court of D.C., guys, Judge James Boasberg, who ruled against President Trump deporting Tren de Aragua gang members and others on flights down to that notorious El Salvadorian prison. Good luck down there, gentlemen. They're not gentlemen, by the way. Gill says Judge Boasberg overstepped his authority and compromised the impartiality impartiality of the judiciary. Of course, it comes as President Trump called for the impeachment of Boasberg. Trump posted the following on Truth Social, saying, "I'm just doing what the voters wanted me to do. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached." 3 exclamation points. "We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged murderers in our country. Make America great again." Once again, 3 exclamation points. However, U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts pushing back against the president. Roberts releasing this statement saying, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose." Okay, John Roberts, you know what? You're a piece of work. For more, let's bring in White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields, joining us from the North Lawn of the White House. Harrison, great to see you. So, look, these legal battles seem to be everywhere. And now, late yesterday, you had this U.S. District Court ruling that the dismantling of USAID was unconstitutional, and they're ordering DOJ to restore access for employees. So taking on the deep state and activist judges, Harrison, was never going to be easy, but I'm curious to get your reaction this morning to the battle royale between the White House and the judicial branch, which apparently seems to now include Chief Justice John Roberts. Good morning to you.
Good morning. And we're not just fighting to enact the will of the people. We are fighting to maintain our constitutional republic against activist judges who are trampling on the executive branch and ignoring our checks and balances. We do have a constitutional crisis on our hands, and that's coming directly from the judicial branch of our government. You have activist judges that are acting like members of the DNC and not members of the bar, and not looking at the Constitution, but looking at the latest memos coming out of the DNC on how to prevent President Trump from enacting his agenda. It's a devastating reality. President Trump is looking the judicial branch in the eye and saying, enough is enough. I am your co-equal. You cannot step on the toes of the executive branch, and he's going to fight for the American people.
While President Trump is fighting the judiciary, he's also fighting to make sure that the U.S. economy stays strong and that we have fair and equitable trade practices, hence tariffs, April 2nd, the next big date when it comes to that. Vice President J.D. Vance is actually praising President Trump for his use of tariffs. I'd like you to listen to this and then respond.
Now, first, President Trump is starting with and is dead serious about rearranging our trade and tariff regime internationally. We believe that tariffs are a necessary tool to protect our jobs and our industries from other countries, as well as the labor value of our workers in a globalized market. In fact, combined with the right technology, they allow us to bring jobs back to the United States of America and create the jobs of the future. Just look in the past few months at the auto industry as an important example. When you erect a tariff wall around a critical industry like auto manufacturing, and you combine that with advanced robotics and lower energy costs and other tools that increase the productivity of U.S. labor, you give American workers a multiplying effect. Now that, in turn, allows firms to make things here at a price competitive basis. Our president gets that, which is why last month we posted 9,000 new auto jobs after many, many years of stagnation or even decline in the auto sector. It's why, just weeks in, we already have new plant or production announcements from Honda, from Hyundai, and Stellantis worth billions of dollars and thousands of additional jobs on top of the ones that were already created.
Harrison, I'd love for you to expound on the policy of tariffs.
Well, J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance is 100% right, as he usually always is. Talk to people in Buffalo. Talk to people in Detroit. Talk to people in Milwaukee. Talk to people in Cleveland. And ask them what life was like when it comes to industry in those cities 40, 50 years ago. These were bustling cities. Now they're shells of themselves because Democrat and Republican politicians have decided to relinquish Made in America policies and shipped all of our industry overseas. President Trump said we need to get American industry, American dominance back, and that's what he's doing with this industrial renaissance, if you will, to make sure that America returns to its dominance when it comes to being an industrial power. This is what he's doing with tariffs. We have massive deficits all across the globe, especially with our allies. President Trump is trying to level the playing field, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Harrison, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has been expanding new media reach and access in this administration. Exciting when David Brody and I were there to see all of the independent media there. What's your comment on how those efforts are going?
Well, it's so great to see everyone here from RAV and fellow conservative outlets. But it's not just conservative outlets. We have more independent leaning and liberal leaning outlets that are having more access to this White House. Remember, on day one, President Trump and our press office reinstated the badges of over 400 reporters that President Joe Biden denied. He denied them access. Talk about a constitutional crisis against the First Amendment. Our press office, the White House Correspondents Association here, is bustling when it comes to people coming into this building and having access to the President of the United States. Caroline Leavitt is looking at them directly, taking their questions, and we have a good story to tell. We have nothing to hide. We're going to look these reporters in the eyes and combat them when they do have fake news reporting, which is oftentimes the case. But we have a situation where we are expanding access to this White House in support of free speech, something that President Joe Biden trampled on. It's a beautiful thing here, especially when we've got the most transparent president in American history in President Donald J. Trump.
Harrison Fields joining us live from the White House. Harrison, always good to see you. We appreciate you taking some time for us this morning.
Thanks, Harrison.
Take care and God bless.
God bless.
All right, you as well. All right, folks, now let's get over to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's had a pretty rough week. Schumer has now postponed his book tour. His team blamed security reasons after he supported the GOP's 6-month continuing resolution last week. By the way, Schumer calls the deal the lesser of two evils instead of letting President Trump operate in a government shutdown environment. For more, let's bring in the host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, Tudor Dixon. Tudor, it is always good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you make of this Schumer excuse here? Yeah, I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it as an open-ended question. What do you make of this Schumer situation?
Well, obviously, we know the behind the scenes because it's playing out right in front of us. It's the Democrats they're having an internal war right now. They don't like the moderates. The AOCs of the world are taking center stage. They're becoming a very progressive party. You saw what happened with Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, and that sort of set the stage for this. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is setting the stage for the demise of her own side of the party because she went to him and she was like, hey, Joe, you're out. It's time to go. And now this same thing is happening to Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is trying to play the same negotiation game that he's always been used to for decades in Washington. But now the progressive side of his party is coming to him and saying, guess what, buddy? It's time for you to go. I mean, he was even on The View yesterday and they're saying, you know, is it time for you to step out of leadership? Is it time for you to let someone else step in? And really everyone across the board in the Democrat Party is pushing AOC to front and center, which I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's make sure that is who the Democrats are, because even moderates like Bill Maher, who in some cases Bill Maher has been very progressive on some issues, and he's out there going, do you really want this to be the face of the Democrat Party? Did you not watch what happened in 2024 in this election? Do you not see why people are flocking to Republicans, are flocking to President Trump? But they don't. They're absolutely in complete crisis and complete chaos with no leader and no message. They're scrambling to find that, and they're throwing people off the ship as they go.
Yeah, there is no fact check needed, Tudor, at all on what you just said, for sure. By the way, you mentioned AOC. Let's talk about AOC for a second. She could be literally the face of the Democrat Party. As a matter of fact, she really is, if you think about it. There's a new poll from CNN. AOC scored the highest on who reflects the core values of the Democrat Party. Oh, my goodness. Anyhow, right behind AOC was Kamala Harris and word salad, and Bernie Sanders with the bad hair. So, Tudor, let's talk about this. I mean, does this even really shock you where the left has gone? Because, look, they made a deal. When I say a deal, Biden had a choice. He could have gone moderate. He decided not to. He went with the far left. Schumer did the same thing. And here we are today.
It doesn't surprise me because she's actually very real. I mean, when she comes out and talks, she means it. She's not playing a part. She's not faking it. If you look at the other people who have been considered leaders or upcoming leaders in the Democrat Party, you've got Gavin Newsom with his new podcast. And he could not sound cornier. He's got Charlie Kirk on. He's giggling. He does not come off as a leader. You've got Gretchen Whitmer, who's out there doing these phony videos, pretending to be a potato. She's feeding people Dorito communion. It's all fake. It's all very faked. It's all very staged. I mean, even when you saw Tim Walz out there and he was doing these videos and he was coming out on stage and he was acting the fool, that was all very fake. The problem that the Democrats have right now is that AOC is the one who's real. I mean, she comes out and she talks about policy, and it may not be how Democrats have talked about policy in the past, but the way she talks about it is from the heart. This is what she believes. When she's selling it, you know she's selling something that she buys hook, line, and sinker, and she wants you to as well. It's totally radical. It's totally against what the American people have always lived and what they want, and yet that is the message that they have to live with, because the people who should have been groomed to become the next leaders of the party, they're just out there playing a game. They literally are recording what I would say is plays or movies, but they're not. It's not their real selves. This is acting. So the only person who is genuine in their entire party right now, I mean, even Jasmine Crockett, you can say what you want. This woman is also playing a part. The only person who is being herself is AOC. That's where we are.
It's that authenticity. And Tudor, that's why you have stuck in the hearts of voters after your run, even though we'd love to have you back at RAV, speaking for myself. But I feel like you're destined for some really exciting things. You released a statement hinting at a potential run either for Michigan governor or senator. When will we hear a decision from you? And you can announce right now, by the way, on the show if you'd like. We wouldn't mind.
Feel free.
Well, I wanted to get feedback from people. You know, obviously, I want to serve the people of Michigan. You've known this for many years. I want to be a servant leader for them, and whatever that looks like for the people, it's a decision that I believe that Michigan and me, we have to make together. And that's why I put out that statement saying, look, I'm ready to do the hard work. I'm ready to go out there and raise the money and go out on the ground and talk to people and talk about the issues. And I have been doing that since I ran in 22. I have made sure to stay out talking to people and making sure I know what the people of Michigan need. And so now I have to make that decision. Obviously, we weren't expecting the Senate seat to be an open seat until Gary Peters decided to retire. So that opens up two avenues. But I need to find out what the people of Michigan want me to do, and then I will take that path.
All right, fair enough.
Well, none of us live in Michigan, but we all think that you should definitely do something. One or the other.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we know you won't do creepy communion as well. Hey, by the way, stick around if you don't mind. We just need to kind of keep you hostage during the break, because coming up, Gavin Newsom has asked for yet another loan to foot some bills for illegal aliens. Oh, please, Tudor, talk about that for a second. We have those details. We're back in a moment. back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody on a Wednesday. Great to have you with us this morning. Time now to drain the swamp. This morning, we're flushing out the former Biden administration. There's a lot of flushing to do. And there's the toilet. Newsom reportedly asking for another $2.8 billion for the state Medicaid plan that covers illegal aliens for, wait for it, free. Newsom's plan blew through the money. There was a first loan for $3.44 billion. Now he's asking for another $2.8 billion on top of that, bringing the total now to more than $6 billion. And what is the main driver of all of this shortfall? Well, numbers show it is illegal aliens. We still have Tudor Dixon with us. Tudor, what do you make of this type of stuff from Gavin Newsom? He's trying to moderate, but come on, we know the deal.
Well, he's obviously not, because, I mean, this is what we just talked about. They try to play a role, but then they can't get away from their progressive policies. And you don't even know if this is something that he wants or he's just been pushed by all of the radicals in his state to get there, because he keeps pretending that he wants to be a moderate, although nothing he's ever done has shown that he's a moderate. But, I mean, think about this, David, in the face of us having Donald Trump having to fight these courts, these radical courts, to make sure that we're getting murderous gang members out of the country, people that Gavin Newsom supported Joe Biden flying in. I mean, think about what the optics of this are right now in the country. President Trump has done nothing since he's gotten to office but try to protect the American people. Everything he's done has been about getting national security back, getting the country back on track. And here you have Gavin Newsom saying, hey, could I get a handout for the guys that you know are committing crimes in this country, for the people who you are trying to get out of this country, to make sure that people like we don't have another Laken Riley, we don't have another Jocelyn Nungare. We are trying to protect young women, and he is asking for money for people who have committed these crimes.
It's ridiculous. 30 seconds or less. Elise Slotkin the other day, right? The State of the Union or the joint address to Congress, she gave the rebuttal. Clearly, the point was that she's from Michigan and they're losing Michigan. They need Michigan back. She mentioned Reagan, 9,000 times in that speech. I mean, come on. I mean, we get what they were trying to do. We got 20 seconds. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she tried to play the moderate. That's how she got elected. But let me make sure everybody knows that when it came down to the vote for men in women's sports, she abandoned her duty. She didn't even show up. This is one of her first votes as a freshman senator. We should never forget that she stood against women. She turned against us, and we will never let her forget that she is a radical just like the rest of them.
100%. I look up Great American in the dictionary, and there's your picture, even though they don't have pictures in the dictionary, but there you are. Tudor Dixon, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up on American Sunrise, we all know it's very hard to get a home in this market, but how can you protect it when you do get a home? Well, we have those answers next on American Sunrise.
Thanks to the bell. Welcome back, everyone. We're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring here in about 7 minutes or so. I can tell you that pre-market trading looking pretty good. As you can see, our board is mostly green. Silver is the only outlier. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all in the green. Throughout the day, we're going to be keeping an eye on the Fed as it's expected to announce new interest rates. We'll find out whether, in fact, the interest rates will drop, and that, of course, could impact the markets as well. Again, we'll keep you updated on all of that throughout the day. But now, let's get you over to David Brody.
Thank you, T. Bates. That's a big deal. We'll see. Trump administration would like to see those interest rates go down for sure. All right. And so would all the Americans. All the Americans? What am I, Trump? The Americans, the evangelicals. All right. Buying a home in today's economy remains hard. As interest rates remain high, they've come down a little bit. We'll see about later this afternoon. It's still hard, though. But even after buying a home, people worry about security. And now there's a new type of home theft. It's called title theft. It's a big deal. It's a big problem. How can people prevent it? Well, for more, let's bring in investigative reporter John Sommer, who works with the group Home Title Lock. John, great to have you here. So tell us about title fraud, house stealing. What in the world? With all this digital stuff today, it is just a nasty world out there.
You use the magic word, David. By the way, good to see you this morning. And let's hope those interest rates start coming down because it's going to make homes more available for people. But it's also going to create problems as well because, as you mentioned, David, one of the new crimes, at least on the scene right now, is something that really has only become evident to law enforcement offices and so on, and people in real estate. As you named it, is called home title theft or deed theft, or I like the term house stealing or title pirates, but it's all basically the same thing. The bad guy finds a way to transfer the title of your property into their name or into a criminal entity's name or some other fictitious name, and then they extract the value of that property because they don't want the house. They want what it's worth. And you and I both know that in the past several years, home prices and the values have gone way up. And so it's easy for them, once they transfer that title, to be able to extract the value, either by selling it, but more than likely they're going to take out a loan or multiple loans on it, transfer it to a bank someplace, and then they are gone before you would ever know it.
Wow. So then how does this work exactly? I got multiple questions here. First of all, I'm curious about the technology here. So you've got Home Title Lock. What do they do? Like, how do they kind of keep this safe for homeowners from a technology standpoint and other ways?
Yeah, the company that you mentioned, Home Title Lock, is really the pioneer in the industry. And what they do is different from, say, companies that will monitor your credit or your personal information and so on. They actually monitor the title or the deed to your home, and they monitor it 24/7, which is something that you and I it's just simply not practical to do because you can do it online, but more than likely nobody's going to be doing it 24/7. Then if there's something fishy going on, in other words, if they see some activity on that title, they alert you right away. And that's another thing that just simply can't be done that quickly. The third thing, which is the most important, David, with Home Title Lock and none of the other services that monitor to do this, is they work with you to restore that title in your good name. And they have the people, the attorneys and so on to back it up to $1 million worth of time to do it, which otherwise you have to go through the court system. You have to hire an attorney. It could take years. I have horror stories on people that have had to go through this trauma. And with the company Home Title Lock, it basically is peace of mind. They do all of this for you. It's just one less thing you have to think about in this day and age with all the crazy stuff.
Yeah, don't you have to have like notary stamps or IDs for title transfers? Like, are they just making this stuff up out of thin air, like digitally? Like, what?
Yes.
I don't get that.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, you nailed it. Basically, with the internet and with artificial intelligence, I can get a notary stamp off of any number of different places. I have a couple, but once all the paperwork looks official, And you can take it down to the county clerk's office. If everything looks proper, then they can't question it and they will pass it. And it's a very easy thing to do. I've talked to criminals. I talked to a guy that spent 13 years in prison for doing this, and you can't believe how quickly it can be done before you ever know it. And it's too late at that particular point.
All right. So Home Title Lock, where do people get more information? How do they get started? What do they do?
Well, they go to HometitleLock.com. And I believe that we have a promo with you, David, and American Sunrise.
Yes.
It's Sunrise. And
that's right.
There, they'll get a free trial. I think they'll give you a discount on it. And there are stories on there. I mean, do your own due diligence, just like I've done when I researched this crime. I'm working with the local DA's office on it right now, because here on the Central Coast of California, it's open land is just as up for grabs as it is if it has a house on it, or a house in the woods or whatever. Yeah. So go on to HometitleLock.com, check it out for yourself. And I think I think you'll find it's not expensive. I think you'll find it's just one less thing to think.
John, really appreciate the great information. Thanks so very much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Once again, you bet. The promo code is Sunrise, by the way, HometitleLock.com/Sunrise. And then you put in the promo code Sunrise, you get a free title history report, so you can find out if you're already a victim and access to your personal title expert. It's $250 value when you sign up, by the way. Make sure, by the way, to check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. Exclusions do apply. Anyhow, HometitleLock.com. Take a look. /warranty, we should say. HometitleLock.com/warranty. All right, time for T. Bates in Denver. The opening bell, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Yeah, the applause is underway. Bell is ringing here momentarily, and then we'll see how the markets are looking. Big news coming out of the Fed today. There's going to be a vote on whether to keep interest rates where they are, potentially drop them. The initial reporting is that the expectation is the central bank will vote to keep interest rates as are, however, announce 1 to 2 interest rate cuts at some point in time this year. We'll, of course, find out for sure once the central bankers meet there and the board meets. We'll be reporting on that. In the meantime, right now, as you can see, the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all in the green. Gold is also up, as is crude oil. Silver, the only negative spot on our board. But again, as the day progresses and as the Fed makes its ruling on interest rates, that could impact how this day of trading goes. And with interest rates expected to drop at some point in time this year, you could end up saving a ton on everything that you finance. That's great news, right? Well, here's the thing. To be able to cash in on those savings, you need a higher credit score. How can you achieve that? With Smart Credit. On average, Smart Credit users raise their credit score up to 34 points in just 30 days. Imagine it. A lower car payment, better mortgage rates, and major savings. Smart Credit's patented technology scans your credit profile and pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when in order to pay them, in order to maximize your score. It's like having the best credit knowledge in your pocket. Don't wait. Take control of your credit score with Smart Credit and be ready to cash in when interest rates ultimately do fall. Start with your 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/RAV, and for just $1, see how many points you can add to your credit score. That's smartcredit.com/RAV. Average point changes, by the way, are based on historical data. Individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. Still to come here on American Sunrise, rock star Kid Rock praised the efforts of Elon Musk and Doge. We've got that and so much more next here on American Sunrise.
back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to hop on in our conversation on Getter and Rumble. Time now to take the political pulse of America. The beat today, the relationship between Elon Musk and President Trump. Trump and Musk have been working side by side, reining in that government spending just like they promised, and their efforts have been catching the eyes even of musician Kid Rock. And so our own Eric Bolling asked him all about this. Take a look.
Man, I mean, I think Elon just got on board because he wanted to help his country. He saw the, the waste and the crap. I mean, what were you going to do? What were your choices, to go for the Democratic Party, and their disarray that they've been in with Kamala Harris? Trump's, proven himself the first 4 years to be the smartest guy in the room, hands down. And he's a lot of fun beyond that. So, I just think it makes sense. Somebody wanted to help their government, didn't want to get paid for it, wanted to help their country. So, of course, he's going to come in. I got to know Trump early on in his administration, was a big supporter from when he came down the escalator. And, he's done nothing but prove me right.
Kid, how do you feel? I think Bannon calls people like you and I original gangster MAGA crew. How do you feel about the newbies? How do you feel about Bezos coming on board, or Mark Zuckerberg coming on board, or that lunatic Lindy Lee, who used to be a Kamala Harris advisor, supporter, senior aide, all of a sudden saying, I didn't really like them. Now I'm pro-Trump. I know we want the bigger party, we want everyone on board, but I feel a little offended by it. How about you?
I mean, I think they got to prove themselves. That's the bottom line. They got to, you can come in and, people call it kiss the ring or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, sleep with one eye open with them and, let them prove, what they believe in and who they support and what policies they get behind. And, if they want to keep, speaking of, Meta and all that, if they want to keep, what do they call it? Shadow boxing or shadow banning people like me and Joe Rogan and, certain outspoken people, I'm sure yourself. So, I just say sleep with one eye open, but welcome aboard. But, what was it? Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Ronald Reagan also, beware the Trojan horse. I agree with that one, Kid. So Trump tends to kind of piss off the rest of the world. Let's be honest. I mean, Gulf of America, what a great idea. It's so logical, made so much sense. Gulf of America, Greenland, Canada, 51st state. This one created a bit of an international incident, I think. So there's a guy named Raphael Glucksmann. He's an MEP, which is a member of European Parliament, who said, we want our Statue of Liberty back. We're from France. We want our Statue of Liberty back. Listen to Caroline Leavitt's response to that.
So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country.
What's Kid Rock's response to the French?
Boom, mic drop. Mic drop. That young lady is something else. She is a boss. Yeah. She is a boss. I mean, if they really want it back, I'd say just let's weld a big gold middle finger on it and send it back.
I was thinking someone can make one of those memes of the helicopter picking up the Statue of Liberty and like bang it, clang it around the Eiffel Tower and drop it back. You really want it? Take it. It's yours.
I think we got to remember, when these, like she said, these low-level, no-name politicians come in and say this stuff. We shouldn't let it divide us from there's. I know several French people who run companies over there in Paris and stuff, and I'm good friends with them. They are huge Trump fans, huge, the pro-America agenda, and they wish they had more of that in their country. So, we got to remember there's still good people in these countries, even though you got these knucklehead left-wing lunatic politicians always, spewing off this crazy stuff. So we got to remember we got some good people over there, but yeah, France has got to definitely turn around some of their country.
Yeah. And how many Canadians do we have right here in America who will come up to me and say, 51st state, not a bad idea. A lot of Canadians would actually enjoy being part of the United States.
I think so. I mean, I know, we're actually on our Rock the Country tour taking Nickelback's headlining the Friday night with us. And I remember them telling me years ago, I was asking them about, socialized medicine. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but they, at the time, it was like, they were not, and I've talked to plenty of other Canadians. I mean, I'm from Detroit. We're, the only place in America where you can drive south to Canada. So, we spent a lot of time there as kids, and especially touring, doing other things. And there's some great people in Canada. I'd say the majority when you get outside of
Yeah, but kid, what about these Canadian this Canadian knucklehead, one of those Parliament people who said we're going to shut off electricity, power, and gas service to people in Detroit and in America if you don't stop with the tariff things? What's your message to them?
Good luck defending yourself if something bad goes down.
Yeah, we are fortunate. And they're lucky, just the proximity to the United States.
I mean, they're basically going to try the bigger penis game with Trump, and they're not going to win.
I have no background to comment on whether that's an accurate or not accurate statement. I digress. Rock. So your concerts now, you talk about your tour, your concerts. Are you seeing a different crowd come out? Because, for a while people were like, Kid Rock, but Trump, they didn't really know if they liked Trump or not. Now they love him. Young people just adore Trump now. Are you seeing a swoosh of support, especially for you?
I mean, I've been pretty fortunate, pretty blessed that things have kind of been slow and steady at the wheel for, 25 years. It's always been a pro-American crowd. I mean, it's not like I just started, riding out on, American themed, motorcycles and dropping American flags and everything else that I do. It's a big, patriotism celebration at the show. So, you definitely see kids now for sure. I don't know if things have really changed. I like to look at it. It's kind of like, it's when times are hard, you kind of weed out who your friends really are. And so that's kind of all it's done to me. The few people or however many there's been that panties are all in a bunch over my politics or standing up for what I believe in, loving my country, like good riddance, You're probably not going to have a great time at my show anyway. So
right, exactly. Not gonna like your songs or your lyrics. I guess, Rock, before we let you go, the relationship with Trump, how you've always been close to him. Does you pick up the phone and your phone rings, it's the White House's president wants to talk to Kid Rock? Is that how it goes down?
Yeah, he's got a direct number. I can't believe he's still got it as president. Just, it's 50-50. He's a busy guy, but I know the times to catch him. If I really have to talk to him about something a lot of times we just talk about anything. It's not, I don't drill him on politics 24/7. I'd love to get this ticketing thing, to put a cap on the resale of ticket prices. So, which is pretty far out for, us capitalists, people, deregulation people. But, speaking of France, they actually do it in France, and it's worked, so working class people can afford to go to multiple shows, because right now it's just ridiculous. And when I say, you don't see a lot of artists saying this, or managers or people, because we're actually making more money under the current system. But I've been the first one to say I'm a little overpaid. Like, I would rather get my tickets into the hands of fans, So that's one thing I've drilled him about a little bit, which he's going to take some action on. We're going to see where it ends up.
Well, maybe Doge can wiggle into that area. Speaking of Doge,
he put Alina Habba on it. She's a pit bull. I love her.
She is. I thought she was going to be the press secretary, to be honest with you, but Caroline Levitt's doing a great job, and either one of those two would be great. Elon, what's your relationship like with Musk? And you must cross paths with him the amount of time you're close to Trump. He's always seems to be there.
We text a little bit here and there, and I got to sit with him at the UFC fight when I first met him for 4 hours plus or something. Then he came out on the golf course and hung out with us. We had a great time there, had some lunch and stuff. So I would consider him a friend at this point. He's a lot of fun, man. I mean, it's kind of people always ask me that, what's it like? I'm like, we're always, every time I'm with him, we're laughing and clowning about something, like who had the weirdest outfit on the golf course. I'm trying to get some sun, so I'm golfing in a wife beater. It's 85 degrees. He comes out, he's in he looks like a goth kid in like a black sport coat, black pants, and so I'm teasing him, and we're having good laughs. And You wouldn't think the guy has two nickels to rub together when you're hanging out with him. We're just, just fun,
just
dude.
a couple of regular guys, the richest man in the world, one of the international rock star, Kid Rock, hanging out at the golf course. I would love to be hanging with you folks. And
all right, Sweet Home Alabama, roll tide roll. Love that interview. Great job with that, Eric. So, you guys, will President Trump be able to run for a third term? War Room's host and Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, says, hey, that could happen. We have his comments next here on American Sunrise.
Singing Sweet Home Alabama all summer long. Catching walleye from the dock, watching the waves roll off the rocks. She'll forever.
Let's spill some tea.
Let's Spill Some Tea is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTCO.com. Again, use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Let's get right into what's in the cup today, and we're talking about the host of War Room, which you can see right here on RAV, and President Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon. Bannon says that plans are underway for President Trump to run for a third term in 2020. Don't take it from me. Here's Steve Bannon himself.
Firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump. A man like this comes along once every century if we're lucky. We've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
And obviously, anybody who doesn't like what you say but judges it as a function of a lack of intelligence doesn't know anything about you. I don't make that mistake. You're a smart guy. You know he's term limited. How do you think he gets another term?
We're working on it. I think we'll have a couple of alternatives. Let's say that. We'll see. We'll see what the definition. We'll see what the definition of term limit is.
All right. Well, so you're talking about litigating this issue, because I don't want people to listen to our interview and say Bannon's cooking up an insurrection. Bannon is cooking up. You know what I mean? I want people to get a straight take on where your head is.
Had greater long shots than Trump 2028, and we've got a lot of stuff we're working on there. We're not prepared to talk about it publicly, but in a couple of months, I think we will be.
All right, let's bring in David and Dr. Gina to talk a bit more about this. It's one of those things where you throw it out and it gets everyone's antennas and hairs on the back of your neck raised because it would be an interesting idea. And to get there, a lot has to be, in Steve Bannon's words, worked out, David.
Yeah, look, memo to us here at American Sunrise. Let's get a legal scholar on and talk about this because there are a lot of questions that need to be asked, legitimate questions. And I say legitimate because this is now getting more oxygen. And I think we owe it to, obviously, you out there, our audience, and ourselves, obviously, to have the facts right. There's a push to amend the 22nd Amendment. That's the kind of the when I say the no-brainer part of it, that's how they would do it if they could do it. The problem is to amend the Constitution. Here we go, 3/4 of states, and got to call a constitutional convention. A lot of different things going on there. So that's a heavy lift. But there is a loophole that some say is in the 22nd Amendment that says that he could, President Trump, be the vice president and then quickly ascend to the presidency that way. That's a loophole that some people, legal scholars, have argued. So look, Gina, there's a lot of different theories here, all pretty much long shots, to say the least. But it's worth discussion as it relates to what's going on behind the scenes here, Dr. G.
Wow, the thoughts in my head are firing at me. I have so many thoughts, Terrance. I can barely consolidate it into sound bites, which is unfortunately what we do in the wonder of television, right?
Well, you've got 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Dr. G. Go.
I really thought this was a crazy thought when I first heard it. Hearing Steve Bannon say it is a very eye-opening thing because look, it's true. Steve Bannon is a special sort of genius. Donald Trump is a special sort of genius. I think we have a genius in J.D. Vance, and I think we have a genius in Elon Musk, no doubt about that. So could they come up with a way to do this? I think quite possibly so. There's a maternal side of me that is very protective of President Trump, who is my friend. And that side of me says, I don't want him to do this. I don't want him to take the attacks. Couldn't someone else take this mantle after him and do just as well? Perhaps one of the names I just mentioned. I don't want to see him continue to be fired upon. I want to see him enjoy his life a little bit. Like, all of those things come at me as well. So I don't know where I fall down on this. I really don't. I feel like, couldn't someone else take this mantle and do just as well with the example President Trump has set and with the template? Having said all that, if President Trump wants it, I will be just like every true MAGA patriot and Tea Partier. I will be 1,000% behind him, doing everything I can, as will my whole entire family, who is an army in and of themselves, if you don't even count the animals. I will be helping in every way I can. So, Terrance, I don't know. This is really a talker.
It is, and that's why I kind of set it up that way. The mention of it alone kind of gets your attention, and there's one part of me, similar to you, Dr. Gina, that is for tradition, if you will, 2 terms, and then you move on, term limits. The other part of me is curious about if this is possible. How would it potentially be possible? How could you make this happen? So I'm going to reserve judgment for now, and I am very curious to see how Steve Bannon and whoever else is involved in all of this would ultimately go about trying to make this happen, and if it in fact is possible. David, it looks like you have one last point to make. Go ahead.
One last thing, there's a devil's advocate argument, obviously, that imagine President Obama, term 1, term 2, term 3.
Yeah. But,
listen, short term, long term. I'm just saying, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just simply saying that that's out there.
No, but this is the reason I'm opposed to term limits, is because it takes the power out of the hands of the voters. We, the voters, need to hold our friends and family and church members and everything else accountable to be active voters, so that we don't need the government to tell us what we can can and can't do. We don't need to vote our own limits against our power of the voting ballot in either. So, you know, this is a whole big conversation, Pandora's box. We can talk about a different day, and I'm sure we will.
Oh, you all think playing the music is going to stop us? Playing this music ain't going to stop nobody?
Turn the music off! Turn the music off! No, we got to go.
We do have to go. Still to come here on American Sunrise. They are home. We're talking about the stranded astronauts who are on the International Space Station. They're back on Earth this morning, and we'll have the story coming up.
Welcome back, you guys, to American Sunrise. It's been a spirited show today. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us. It is now time for our Sunny Side Up. And in the pan today, they're home. The stranded astronauts who were at the International Space Station for about 9 months are finally home. SpaceX sent a rocket up to go in and get them. And they splashed down last night's promises.